Hey, how you doing? This is Kandu from Kandubiz.com, and we had a question brought to us today. When I say we, this is Kandu, and I'm here with my buddy Daniel. I'll just call him D for short. And we had a question that was brought to us, and this particular question from a client we have and/or friend and associate, and that was from none other than Jason Rogers. He's the owner of Carrera Finish Mobile Detail out of Baltimore, Maryland. And his question to me was, how do I file and prepare paperwork for a corporation or an LLC? And this is depending on what type of entity you are trying to file. But in this particular case, he is trying to file an LLC. So Daniel has created a 5-minute video to walk you through that particular process. And I want to go over some of the points that are in that video I'm going to go over with you. Let me open a new page here. Let me give you a brief history on entities. And I'm going to go really quick on this because our point here is just to give you information on how to file your corporation or LLC. We're assuming that you already read some type of literature, either from our website or a book. NOLO is one that Daniel talks about at the end of this video. But I'll give you a brief history. There are 5 ways to do, basic ways to do business in the United States, and here they are here. When you're looking at doing business here, these 5 ways you're going to choose are going to depend on the way you're taxed. These entities are taxed differently. When you're dealing with banking and credit, for instance, you're drawing on a line of credit or you're actually doing some banking. And last but not least is liability. When it comes to somebody trying to sue you, these are your 3 sections that you're looking at as it pertains to creating a company. Let's very quickly talk about the sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is 1 owner. General partnership is 2 or more. A limited partnership is 2 or more, but you have a limited partner and a general partner. And then you have a corporation, whether you're talking about an S Corp, and that is a tax status. When you hear subchapter S status, that's what an S Corp is. And you also see a nonprofit here, which is usually dealing with charity. Then you have an LLC, which is also a company that gives you limited liability, somewhat like a corporation. So depending on what you're doing, what type of business you have, the individual who called in on this, Jason, has a detail company, auto detail company, and he has decided that he's going to use a limited liability company. So let's move on. There's about 5 or 6 items that I want to go over that Daniel will be speaking to you about in his presentation. Again, it's a great presentation. It's about 5 minutes long, and it's going to kind of walk you through what we're talking about here. But one of them was he talked about getting a book, and that book he said was NOLO. There's a few sources or many sources you can go to. You can go online and just do a Google search. And if you do a Google search, you should find plenty of information. And I would just Google Corps or LLC, and you'll find information you can read as well. Or like he stated, you can go get a book by NOLO. That's what we did when we were first starting out. He's also going to cover the name, once in the name of a company and how you name it. He'll talk to you about that. One thing I did want to talk to you about, when you do your name, for instance, if you're an LLC, you'll need to have LLC in that name. You could read on the back of your form and it'll tell you how you have to title your company. For instance, if it was John Doe Company, you'd have to have John Doe LLC. And you're literally informing people you're doing business with what type of company you are, because that tells them that their liability is limited. And if you notice, if you've ever done a corporation, you'll always see, if you ever see a corporation, you'll see Corp at the end, or you may see INC at the end. And that's just what they must do to tell you that they are a corporation, because you're given notice, I'm a corporation and we have limited liability. And when it comes to dealing with us in court, you must know that we are a corporation. If you don't do that, you'd have some problems going in court. Next, you may hear Daniel talk about a registered agent. Registered agent. And a registered agent is someone who is going to be responsible for correspondence by way of mail with the state that you're filing in. We file in California, so that registered agent usually will be the owner of the company. but it does not have to be. It could be a hired service. You could hire different people in different states will have companies that act as registered agents, and they'll receive your mail for you, especially if you don't have an address in that state, because you must have a registered address in the state that you're filing. For instance, if you're filing in the state of Nevada, which a lot of people go to, and you don't have an address in Nevada, then you could just simply hire a company and they'll act as your registered agent. More than one manager. Eric talks about what type of management you should be. And he states that a lot of times we will suggest that you choose out of three. I think there's three options there. And he chooses the one that says more than one manager. And he chooses the one that's more than one manager. There's a reason why we do that. I suggest you do a little bit more reading and or get some legal help before you actually check that box so you know what you're doing. And last but not least, what I wanted to cover is organizer. You'll see a box there that says organizer of the company. And an organizer is not anybody who's a principal of the company. It can be, just like the registered agent, it can be an owner, an officer of the company, but it does not necessarily have to be. So an organizer also can be somebody who is hired to assist you, or we used to have a company where we assisted people with filing their company. That's about it that I wanted to cover. You'll find a lot more interesting things in Daniel's video. I appreciate you coming over to Kandubiz.com. Remember, I'm going to give you this disclaimer, meaning always hire an attorney and or read a book so you can get your information, as we don't want to be responsible for giving you bad information. As you can see on a lot of my things, some of my things is misspelled. I was just talking to Daniel, and I think I misspelled liability on the last one. And yes, I know how to spell it. It's liability. Did I get it right that time, Daniel? Sometime I'm moving quick, though. And again, thanks for coming.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daniel from Kandu Academy, and this is how to start a limited liability company. This video is intended to give a basic outline of how to start an LLC. Now, before we start, we feel it's important that you educate yourself as to what an LLC is. If you're unfamiliar with a limited liability company, we recommend that you consult an attorney to discuss what business entity will best work for you. If you don't have an attorney, or don't want to invest the time and money into consulting one, we recommend that you at least pick up a book to further educate yourself as to what an LLC is. We recommend Nolo Press's Form Your Own Limited Liability Company, which would be available online or in your local bookstore. We're going to start out by picking a name for our new limited liability company. Your company's name should in some way reflect the company you want to have. You wouldn't name a bank Waste Disposal, so you want to pick something that makes sense for your company. You're going to want to avoid the use of your own name in your company. You want to distinguish yourself and your company as separate entities, and you want to keep ownership of the company confidential. And most importantly, we need to make sure that the name is not already being used. We will do this by going to the Secretary of State's webpage. This may vary from state to state, but the process should be similar. As you can see, we're on the California Secretary of State's webpage. Your state's webpage can be found by a simple Google search. Here we're going to go to Business Entities, Business Search, select Limited Liability Company. We're going to enter a name of a company. We're going to call it Good Workers LLC. See how this comes up with search results for Good Workers LLC? Return no entity records. That means that that event name is available. Let's go back and let's look for, let's say, Microsoft. Search for that, and that does come up with a company that already existing. Now, it is okay for names to be similar, but you don't want them to be exact. Now that we have a name for our company, let's look at establishing a mailing address for the company. We generally recommend that you use a PMB or postal mailbox for your company. These can be found at any mail store, mailbox, etc., UPS store, or any variation of independently owned in your area. This will give you a real address with a suite number. We recommend that you do not use a P.O. box from a post office. And we strongly recommend that you never use your home address for your business. Now that we have a name and a mailing address for the company, we're ready to start our paperwork. Let's go to the Secretary of State's webpage and get our form. Okay, so we're back on the Secretary of State's webpage. We're going to go under Business Programs here to Forms and Fees, Business Entities, Limited Liability Companies. We're going to get Form LLC-1, which is our Articles of Organization. As you can see here, the filing fee for this is $70. Now that we have our form, we can start filling it out. In line 1 of the form, it wants the name of your company. Make sure that you include the term Limited Liability Company or LLC. In line 3, it's asking for the name of the person who is preparing the paperwork. This does not have to be an owner or even an employee of the company being filed. In line 4, it's asking for the address of the person who's filing the paperwork. In this case, we would use the PMB we got earlier. Line 5 is asking how your company will be managed. Generally, we recommend that you select more than one manager. Even if you only have one manager, you will likely have more than one in the future. Line 7 is asking for a date and signature and printed name of the organizer of the company. This would be the same person we put in line 3. If you have any questions as to anything in the form, I would refer you to the instructions that accompany the form from the Secretary of State. Now that our filing is prepared, we need to get it to the Secretary of State. There are two basic options for this. First is mailing them to the Secretary of State. If you look at the directions from the LLC-1, there are instructions on filing by mail. You'll need to include payment for the filing in form of a check or a money order with the filing. This method has a longer turnaround time, but is cheaper than the alternative, which is option 2, using a resident agent service. A resident agent service is a company that files paperwork on behalf of other companies. One can easily be located via an internet search for your state. This has a faster turnaround time as they will physically send someone to the Secretary of State's window and get the filing done for a small fee. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it informative. I invite you to subscribe to us in order to keep up with any new posts. I invite you to go to Kandubiz.com and click on the donate button, as we are a user-supported webpage, and in order to keep content coming like this, we need your support.